So the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has issued rules and regulations or new guidelines that would affect crypto exchanges in Nigeria, and this includes different things. Like registration fees. So Bolu will give us a rundown on that and what they should expect.
Okay, yeah. So what the SEC is doing is actually proposing changes to guidelines for setting up crypto exchanges and other forms of companies that provide digital asset services, right? So they issued those guidelines in 2022, I think May 2022, and it had guidelines for running a crypto exchange, running a company that provided wallet services, and all forms of digital asset services. I think the name they gave them is, the collective name for all of them is virtual asset service providers, right? So they introduced it in 2022, and now they are trying to make some changes. And those, I think there are a lot of changes, right? But I think the most important ones, right, the major ones were the registration fee, the paid up capital. Yes, the registration fee and the paid up capital. So in 2022, the paid up capital was 500 million, right?
Naira.
500 million naira, yes. And the registration fee was 30 million naira. So now they are proposing a change. They want the registration fee to now be 50 million naira and the paid up capital to be 1 billion naira.
Sorry, how much?
150 million? 50 or 150?
150 million. Yeah.
150 million.
Yes.
How much is this in dollars, please? I can't relate with.
Okay.
Please get out of my face.
All right. So I think 1 billion naira is the Nigerian exchange rate.
It's under $1 million.
Well, the naira gained a bit yesterday, so
Still under $1 million when you think about it. Yeah, it's still under $1 million.
Except,
Okay.
is
That's
this still
fair.
under $1 million?
yeah.
It just gained by 100 naira now. It's not like it made
You
sense.
cannot
Okay, yeah.
sounding
So it's around
excited about the
$706,000, right?
A
So
person
I
precede
think
that.
when you change it to dollar, it now sounds
It now sounds
a bit smaller, right? But even at
It's
that,
still a lot of money. Yeah.
okay, let's not go to that yet. I think you still ask a question on that. But the SEC is proposing it because, there has been a lot of recent changes. Even the CBN made some changes like that to IMTO licenses and other things like that. So that is what the SEC is doing, and they are doing it at a time where there's Nigeria and crypto companies are having, they are at loggerheads.
Okay, so I understand the fact that regulations have to come in to guide how players in a space operate
Yeah.
and make sure that the users are safe. Yes, so I'm trying to understand the motive of the SEC for
Okay.
increasing this money at a time like this.
All right, so they actually shared their motives, right? I think at the end of the document, there was something like justification for what they are proposing. So
Okay.
they said the changes were based on the engagements they've had with stakeholders and the CBN. So they are learning from the CBN. But then when they say engagement with stakeholders, that I don't really understand what they mean, because stakeholders in the crypto space, when they released the first guidelines in 2022, when the paid up capital was 500 million, stakeholders were like, that is too much. And the reason they said it was too much is because it will not give, we don't have crypto exchanges or crypto companies in Nigeria, Nigerian crypto companies that are that established. One. So they said it will just make the foreign ones have an unfair advantage. They already do. I mean, Binance already has an unfair advantage over any sort of Nigerian crypto exchange you can think of, right? But then when you now make the entry for those local players to be even more difficult, right? You take away whatever leg they were standing on at all in the first place, right? So yes, regulations are required to hold people's money, to provide financial services. I think those everything is financial services. To provide services like that, you need to be at least we need to know that you know run away with people's money, which I think is why some of these things are needed. But based on that space, right, it's a nascent space, it's a new space. We don't have players that are that established.
Mhm.
Maybe these guidelines need to be reviewed.
Yes, we might. I think like we might, when we're talking about the volume of money moved through crypto exchanges, it might be big, but I don't think it translates
Value.
to revenue of those crypto exchanges.
So it's a I think that subject has debated a bit
Okay.
recently. When you talk about what the size is, right, of the Nigerian crypto market, like
Mhm.
how much do people really use crypto in Nigeria? Chainalysis from the reports they've been releasing has made us believe that Nigeria is a massive crypto market.
Mhm.
That in a way is correct, right? A lot of people are using crypto, but what is the size of transactions they are doing? So if you ask, I think someone at FTX recently said, they got access to the transactions people do in Nigeria, and while there might be a lot of users, the amount they were transacting was quite small compared to countries like South Africa and compared to an even smaller country like Seychelles. Right, Seychelles is just a small island,
Mhm.
and the value of the crypto transactions we are doing in big Nigeria is not up to Seychelles.
Mhm.
So, I think if you now look at things from that perspective, you now understand that yes, there are a lot of users, yes, adoption, right, which I think is where the mistake is, adoption, volume, value. I think those things we don't fully understand it yet in Nigeria, right? So you might think, oh, there are people using crypto, so local crypto players they are making money and things like that. So it might not be true actually.
So I think in a way it might be influencing the SEC's decision, because when you call those big numbers, you are not really looking at the capacity of
Maybe
the
we should stop making
exchanges.
noise. I think Emmanuel wants to say something.
No, so I'm actually curious if the value is that low, because it's like Binance is kind of debunking that myth that Nigeria is this big crypto market.
So yeah, they say it's less than 1%.
Less than 1% of their value. So
Must be nice.
I'm struggling to see what the Securities and Exchange Commission is trying to achieve by
Raising.
increasing the.
I think I can see it.
Please, what is that?
So, on one hand, they are saying that, or the so they say they had consultations with stakeholders, but they mentioned the CBN.
Yes.
The CBN is not even clear on what their stance on crypto is.
Yet.
On one hand, they are saying banks can transact with crypto,
Mm.
but on the other hand, you're saying 20 billion moved through Binance that was unaccounted for, which presents like this hostile attitude
Mm.
towards cryptocurrency. So if the SEC is telling me that we consulted with the CBN and decided to raise capital requirements, there are only two major reasons you raise capital requirements. One is that you're a rent-seeking body and you just want to grab as much money as you think you can get.
And you're trying to
That's one
discourage
way,
entry.
which...
Mm.
Mhm. Second is that you want to discourage entry
Mm.
into a particular space. The easiest way to do it is to create a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you cannot wake up today and go and start a bank, because you do not have the paid up capital to do it. If you're going to get it, you probably have to sell your entire village, depending on what part of the country you come from, in order to raise the money, right? So
Yeah, right.
I think what the SEC wants to do, sorry, your part of the country doesn't really count. You're from here, Ekiti, Abi?
Please move on.
Sorry,
Move
you're from
on.
Ekiti. But yes, I think what the SEC is trying to do with this is discourage entry. That's the way I interpret it, because you really don't have any justification to raise to significantly raise those rates. So, because I like to think that the government has really good hands working with them, or that they can access virtually any information they need to get. So yes, the analysis tells us huge numbers of Nigerians use crypto. But we also know that Nigeria is not exactly the most prosperous country in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost our place as the largest economy to Egypt. And even with fiat, you can't tell me that people are doing more with cryptocurrency than they're doing with fiat.
Mm-hmm.
How much are we transacting with fiat?
True, though.
Then now let's compare it with cryptocurrency, right? So even if me, the layman on the street, doesn't know all of that, the government at that high level should be able to look and say, okay, it's bobo, they are boboing you people, but we shall know what's up. So they just want to reduce barrier to entry. And it makes sense for them anyway.
Yeah, so when it comes to reducing barrier to entry, I don't know if, Emmanuel, from your experience looking at how regulations have influenced subsectors, when stuff like this come up to reduce, to increase barrier to entry or discourage people from entering those spaces, what do the players in those spaces usually resort to?
Like the existing players in
Yes.
Well, it's what usually comes, what I've noticed in other industry. Let's take the telco space, for instance. You find that you just have a few guys who kind of dominate the space. And it's very difficult for any new player to come in.
Overtake them.
So even though we say, oh, Nigeria has 4 major telcos, in essence,
It's 3.
2.5. I will leave you to guess what that half is.
Of course, you know who the half is.
So, but apart from that, right, I think, yes, typically for really, really critical sector, if crypto, so what I'm even struggling with is how critical is crypto to whatever it is your plan is, right? Telecoms is very critical to the country. Banking, very critical to the country. So you just can't let any cowboy come and he opens one day, has a dream of opening a crypto company and changing the world.
And that's just fund money.
Exactly. So you just can't let it, even if you have the money, based on the checks that this SEC would do, they should even discourage you from getting into the place. But what I think will happen is the few players that are strong enough, you could have mergers, people join together to buy the license and become one company. You could have mergers, you could have acquisitions. Then you now have like a few strong players that are beholden to the regulators and a little bit more structured. So, and we hope that they have fewer issues than Binance does, because Binance seems to be having issues globally. I don't know what's going on, Bulu. But that's by the way.
It's just because they are very large. They are the biggest, so they'll definitely get the most attention.
They're not the only large company. So what's your point?
They're the largest.
No,
I mean, in that space.
In crypto, yes.
Yeah, in that space.
But why is it that they're always having buzzbos?
I think their buzz boost is more, is usually louder, because even Coinbase, that is American, they've also faced their own fair share of.
Okay.
Voila.
It's people that have their own in crypto that are better than.
To listen to the full episode of this podcast, go to podcast.techpoint.africa or click the link in bio, or just click the link shown on your screen right now.